The same Weibo site that forecast a 61 megapixel Nikon Z7 Mark III and a 45 megapixel Nikon Z6 Mark III just posted a full set of specifications on the Nikon Z6 Mark III. But can they be trusted? Well, stick around after this short message as we get into the full details. But first, subscribe to stay up to date on the latest camera news. And for all the minor news stories, all those news stories not quite big enough to have their own separate video, follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter. Weibo user E8M8888 posted a full set of specifications for the much anticipated Nikon Z6 Mark III, which is scheduled to come out this year. These specifications came out a few days ago, but I wasn't all that gung-ho on reporting on them because, well, this source has provided us with, how should we say, questionable or unvalidated specs before that has not a very good track record of getting them right. E8M8888 does have a very good track record when it comes to providing us with camera registrations, but the same can't be said for leaked images or leaked specifications. So the leaked specifications, according to E8M, for the Nikon Z6 Mark III, the much anticipated camera that's due to be announced any time now, is going to have a 24.5 megapixel backside illuminated full-frame sensor. But this sensor is supposed to be, well, faster than the previous sensor. And the image processor? Well, you'll be happy to know it's going to have the XSpeed 7 image processor and just a single processor, not two. So now let's take a look at the continuous shooting speed. Like the Canon EOS R6 Mark II, it's capable of up to 40 frames per second. Now it doesn't mention whether that's RAW or not, but the competition, the Canon EOS R6 Mark II, well, it can do 40 frames per second, and that's RAW as well. So that's certainly something we're looking to see in the Nikon Z6 Mark III. And if that's not fast enough, it will be capable of up to 120 frames per second with the electronic shutter, but will likely have a reduced resolution in that mode, just like the Nikon Z9. You know, one thing that's really annoying about a lot of these leaked specifications is, well, a lot of the specifications are more or less showing off the video capabilities of these cameras and not the stills capabilities. And most people watching, most people interested in buying these cameras are photographers. Nevertheless, we've got to cover off what there is there. So now it's time for the video specifications. We don't have any ISO, we don't have any talk about dynamic range, but in terms of video, this camera, the Nikon Z6 Mark III, will be capable of 6K, 24, 25, 30, 50, and 60 frames per second. E8M also says that this camera will deliver 6K oversampled 4K that will get Apple ProRes 422HQ in 4K mode at up to 60 frames per second. So we don't know if that's 6K oversampled 4K, but I'm willing to assume that it is, and that's a really big benefit. Now in terms of the frame rates for 4K, this is really big. We're going to be able to shoot 4K, 24, 25, 30, 50, and 60 frames per second. And normally 4K 100 and 120 is limited to much more expensive cameras. Well, not this time around. Not unless Nikon has jacked up the price of the Nikon Z6 Mark III, and we expect the price to fall somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500. Again, right in line with the competition, the Canon EOS R6 Mark II and the Sony a7 IV. So 4K at 120 frames per second, that's terrific. Again, if these leaked specifications from E8M, well, they're accurate. Now, one other thing we do get is Nikon RAW. It doesn't mention what that's tied to, but it's in the video section, so I think we're talking about video. And it also doesn't say if it's limited to 4K, if we get it in 6K, or anything like that. It's just not giving us a whole lot of details. And again, there's no ISO information, but we are told that it's going to have IBIS and that it's going to have 7 stops. That's right, 7 stops. It's going to have a pixel shift mode, and while E8M doesn't tell us the resolution, well, all we have to do is multiply 24.5 times 4, and that gives us somewhere around 96 megapixels. I know it gives you a little bit more than that, but I think that's probably what we're looking at because you don't get to use the entire sensor. So what other things? Well, we are told that it's going to have a multi-angle LCD. Now, it doesn't tell us if we're going to get a Sony a7R5 type multi-angle LCD, and I'd be really surprised to see that at this price point, but that would be a really big improvement over the competition. If you're a birder, if you're shooting with super telephotos, having that multi-angle LCD so you can pull the LCD out behind the camera and the lens, I think that's a huge boon. All right, so what have I forgotten? Well, let's take a quick look at the specs here. What have I forgotten to mention? Okay, IBIS, LCD. So the body style, so it's going to have a similar body style and dimensions and button layout to the Nikon Z8. And dual card slots, no surprises there, but don't expect dual CF Express Type B card slots. Same as what we got in the predecessor, one CF Express Type B and one UHS-2 card slot. But what's going to set the Nikon Z6 Mark III apart from the competition won't be the specifications, but the improvements in the autofocus system, its accuracy, dynamic range, and low light performance. Please take these specifications with a grain of salt. While E8M 8888 has a very good proven track record when it comes to camera registrations being very accurate, reliable all the time, when it comes to leaked specifications or images, it's almost as though they're forecasting the images and specifications rather than reporting leaked information. So I would take this with a huge grain of salt. I wouldn't completely trust this, but one thing is for sure. The specifications reported by E8M are very similar to what we saw released back on December the 21st, 2023. But in this case, they're telling us we're getting dual X-Speed 7 image processors, not a single one. They do tell us about an ISO range of 100 to 64,000, a little bit more information about the autofocus system, and a little bit more information about video modes such as HLG, but no Nikon RAW. And that's kind of what's setting apart 2024 from other years, is whether you're talking about Canon and their EOS R1 or the Nikon Z6 Mark III, we have one set of specifications on one hand and an opposing set of specifications on another hand. But there's one thing that we know for sure. The Nikon Z6 Mark II is currently on sale for $400 off, and it's the best price we've ever seen. And I'd say that's some sort of inventory clearing price like we saw with the Canon EOS R5 and the R3, which just received a markdown, a new low price for each of those two cameras. And if you're interested in purchasing the Nikon Z6 Mark II for $400 off, or the Canon R5 or R3 with its new low price, well then please consider using my affiliate links down below. These ones right here, I have them in the description if you're looking at purchasing from B&H, Adorama, or Amazon.com. But please also consider your local camera store. They'd really appreciate your business as well. But one thing, if you do use my affiliate links, I do get anywhere from 2 to 12% back, but that goes right back into the business, and I use that for purchasing new gear. The 100 to 500, the 200 to 800 millimeter, the Canon EOS R5, and I'm going to be purchasing the EOS R5 Mark II, as well as a bunch of lenses. There is one of my users just told me something in a video I posted Saturday, that the EOS R1, when it's announced, we're supposed to be getting 4 new lenses. So is that hearsay or is that reality? Well, I can promise you that when Canon announces the Canon EOS R1, they are going to announce some lenses alongside of it. Most likely some sort of high-end telephoto, maybe the 200 to 500 millimeter. Or maybe they could do a prime like the 35 millimeter f1.2. But if I was Canon, I'd be saving that 35 millimeter f1.2 for the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. And many people have been asking me, do I know more information on the R5 Mark II that I'm not letting out? Yes, I do. Some really exciting specifications. I wish I could tell you about them right now. These are bold. Some of them are bold, at least. Bold enough that you're going to shake your head and say, like, oh my God, about time. Why can't Sony, Nikon, and Panasonic do this? But I've been told I can't talk about these specifications until we get closer to the announcement of the Canon EOS R1. So don't forget to subscribe. Follow me on X. And that way you can stay up to date on all the latest camera gear, news, and rumors. But thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a great rest of the weekend. And as we enter the last week of January, expect things to start heating up. Hopefully we'll get some leaked specifications on the Canon EOS R1, some validated specs on the R1, as well as the Nikon Z6 Mark III. And are we getting a Nikon Z7 Mark III announced at the same time? The only person that's talked about a Nikon Z7 Mark III is E8M 8888. So we'll just have to wait and see. Thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon.